Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 692 for the 9th of January 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. A very sort of muggy overcast. Lots of thunderstorms lately, Sydney, Australia. And where are those Skeptic Zone cats, Henrietta and Moore? They're not in the studio today. It's a bit too warm. They seem to be lazing around on top of things. You know how it is. You go to your favourite couch, you lie down, want to read a book or something, and suddenly, bam, there's a cat on your lap, or one just outside the door, or cat owners know what I mean. Coming up on this week's show, not so many cats, we're going to be playing Skeptical Trivia. Something different to sort of help start off this year in January. When else does a year start? 30 skeptical trivia questions. We did this a few nights ago here for Sydney Skeptics in the Pub. It was a great success online. Lots of things are online. So to start this week's show, we're going to be reading out 30 tricky, skeptical trivia questions. Keep score as you go. And see how your skeptical knowledge fares. And helping me with the quiz this week is Adrian Hill. And I think it was such a success when we did the skeptical trivia online for Skeptics in the Pub with the help of Lara Benham behind the scenes making it all happen. Really, she takes most of the credit. I think we'll be doing it again, probably in maybe around the middle of the year. It was a lot of fun. And the winner remains a mystery. The winner was anonymous, so we can only wonder who that was. Following the trivia quiz, the Trove segment this week looks at power balance. The power balance wristband fad from the years 2009, 2010, 2011, that era, which was incredibly successful for a short time before the whole house of cards came tumbling down when it was revealed. Skeptics knew all the time. It was revealed that these power bands, these wristbands, increase your balance, strength and flexibility, were all a scam. That wasn't a cat outside the window, it was some sort of bird flying by. But an interesting case study in skepticism and consumer affairs and what people will believe and marketing and all sorts of things. Stay tuned at the end of the episode for more announcements from me. But now it's time for me to shut my eyes, dream of a nice beachside house with some Japanese pancakes, some nice red wine, and some good times. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, within the last week at Sydney Skeptics in the Pub online, I think many things will be back online at the moment. Anyway, we had skeptical trivia to kick off 2022, and it was a great success. Thank you to everybody who participated. If you're listening now, you get to do it all over again. But for those people who weren't there, who couldn't join us the other night at Sydney Skeptics in the Pub online, here are the 30 skeptical trivia questions to test your skeptical knowledge. And helping me with the questions this week is none other than Adrian Hill. And this is how it will work. Adrian will read out the question. I will give you 4 possible answers. And then Adrian will tell you which one is the correct answer. No cheating. Well, you can if you like. What am I going to do about it? But it's best if you don't cheat. And so here we go, 30 skeptical trivia questions.
Question 1. James the Amazing Randi was born in Canada in what year?
Was it A, 1930, B, 1926, C, 1931, or D, 1928?
The answer is D, in 1928. Question 2. In 1917, two cousins took photographs of what they claimed were fairies. What is the name given for this strange event?
Was it A, the Cottonwood Fairies, B, the Collingwood Fairies, C, the Cottingley Fairies, or D, the Cottonsley Fairies?
The answer is C, the Cottingley Fairies. Question 3. Former Skeptic of the Year, Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, was born in what country?
Was he born in A, Norway, B, Poland, C, Sweden, or D, Finland?
The answer is C, Sweden. Question 4. Quote, "Don't try to work out how something works until you find out that it works," end quote, is known as?
Is it A, Williams' theory, B, Hyman's maxim, C, Radford's law, or D, Russell's guide?
The answer is B, Hyman's maxim. Question 5. In 1980, James Randi flew to Australia to take part in water divining tests. What was the total amount of the prize money on offer?
Was it A, $40,000, B, $50,000, C, $30,000, or D, $100,000?
The answer is A, $40,000. Question 6. Which city hosted the first Skeptics in the pub?
Was it A, Edinburgh, B, Manchester, C, Liverpool, or D, London?
The answer is D, London. Question 7. What James Bond movie featured a moon landing set and moon buggy?
Was it A, Diamonds Are Forever, B, For Your Eyes Only, C, The World Is Not Enough, or D, Moonraker?
The answer is A, Diamonds Are Forever. Question 8. Which Australian magazine published a fake Nostradamus quote on the back cover just after the 9/11 attacks?
Was it A, the Australian Woman's Weekly, B, New Idea, C, Woman's Day, or D, Truth?
The answer is B, New Idea. Question 9. What is the often overlooked 13th sign of the zodiac?
Is it A, Cygnus the Swan, B, Cetus the Whale, C, Cassiopeia the Queen, or D, Ophiuchus the Serpent Bearer?
The answer is D, Ophiuchus, the Serpent Bearer. Question 10. Uri Geller failed to bend spoons or do any other paranormal trick on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. In what year did this happen?
Was it A, 1972, B, 1973, C, 1974, or D, 1975?
The answer is B, 1973. Question 11. According to some UFO proponents, alien/human clone robots are being created under what location?
Is it A, Old Parliament House, B, Pine Gap Base, C, New Parliament House, or D, the Melbourne Museum?
The answer is B, Pine Gap Base. Question 12. Harry Houdini was born in 1874. What was his real birth name?
Was it A, Martin Steger, B, Frederick Howden, C, Bernard Schwartz, or D, Eric Weiss?
The answer is D, Eric Weiss. Question 13. Betty and Barney Hill claimed to be abducted by a UFO in 1961. Where did this take place?
Was it A, New Hampshire, B, New York State, C, Maine, or D, Massachusetts?
The answer is A, New Hampshire. Question 14. Ayurvedic medicine is a so-called alternative medicine from what country?
Is it A, Sri Lanka, B, Thailand, C, India, or D, Indonesia?
The answer is C, India. Question 15. Ark Encounters is a creation museum made from a giant 1-to-1 scale model of Noah's Ark. In what state can it be found?
Is it A, Texas, B, Georgia, C, Alabama, or D, Kentucky?
The answer is D, Kentucky. Question 16. What was the follow-up book to Chariots of the Gods?
Is it A, History is Wrong, B, Return to the Stars, C, Arrival of the Gods, or D, War of the Gods?
The answer is B, Return to the Stars. Question 17. The Patterson-Gimlin film features a glimpse of what famous cryptid?
Is it A, the Loch Ness Monster, B, Bigfoot, C, the Chupacabra, or D, Champ Lake Monster?
The answer is B, Bigfoot. Question 18. The founder of the Church of Scientology was L. Ron Hubbard. What does the L stand for?
Is it A, London, B, Lexington, C, Lafayette, or D, Leonard?
The answer is C, Lafayette. Question 19. Escaping the Rabbit Hole is a book by?
Is the author A, Mick West, B, Brian Dunning, C, Ben Radford, or D, James Randi?
The answer is A, Mick West. Question 20. Loch Ness, home of the monster, is one of the longest lakes in Britain. How long is it?
Is it A, 24 kilometres, B, 40 kilometres, C, 43 kilometres, or D, 37 kilometres?
The answer is D, 37 kilometers. Question 21. The sailing stones of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley are found in what U.S. state?
Is it A, New Mexico, B, California, C, Arizona, or D, Nevada?
The answer is B, California. Question 22. J.Z. Knight claimed to channel what ancient spirit?
Is it A, Ramtha, B, King Arthur, C, Carlos, or D, Cleopatra?
The answer is A. Ramtha. Question 23. The Nazca Line's geoliths in the desert are found in what South American country?
Is it A. Chile, B. Ecuador, C. Peru, or D. Bogota?
The answer is C. Peru. Question 24. The Search for Australia's Most Gifted Psychic, aired on what TV network?
Was it A. SBS Network, B. the 10 Network, C. the 9 Network, or D. the 7 Network?
The answer is D. 7 Network. Question 25. Taciography is the claimed paranormal ability to do what?
Is it A. see the future in a crystal ball, B. read tea leaves, C. read the bumps on the head, or D. see the future in the clouds?
The answer is B. Read tea leaves. Question 26. Australian-born Ken Ham is a longtime activist for...
Is it A. UFOs, B. homeopathy, C. creationism, or D. free energy machines?
The answer is C. Creationism. Question 27. According to UFO proponents, in what year did an alien spaceship crash near Roswell, New Mexico?
Was the year A. 1947, B. 1950, C. 1949, or D. 1951?
The answer is A. 1947. Question 28. The great seer Nostradamus wrote his books in what century?
Is it A. the 14th century, B. the 17th century, C. the 16th century, or D. the 15th century?
The answer is C. 16th. Question 29. Who is the only person to win the Bent Spoon Award more than once?
Is it A. Pete Evans, B. Fran Sheffield, C. Peter Brock, or D. Merrill Dory?
I know the answer to this one. The answer is A. Pete Evans. Question 30. Wilhelm Reich, who died in prison in the 1950s, sold quack devices based on what energy?
Is it A, Chi energy, B, Reiki energy, C, Orgone energy, or D, scalar energy?
The answer is C, Oregon.
Well, there we go, and thank you very much, Adrian Hill, for reading out those questions. 30 questions. I hope you were keeping score by yourself at home or with your friends. How did you do? How did you do? If you've got more than 15 correct, well done. If you got more than 20 correct, very well done. If you have more than 25 correct, you should have my job. And if you have 30 correct, you've probably heard these before. And please join us for Sydney Skeptics in the Pub, the first Thursday of every month here in Sydney and online when necessary. And it seems necessary at the moment. For more information about that, just go to meetup.com and look for AUST Skeptics.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
It's time once again to head to those pages at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource for Australian newspapers digitised, going back for decades and decades and even into some previous centuries. What a treasure trove it is, and what a treasure trove it has been for the Skeptic Zone. So many interesting historical articles to look up. And today, we're not going so far back in history, only about a decade or so, and we're going to look at references to the infamous power balance wristband. Now, no doubt some of you remember the power balance wristband and its knockoffs, its clones, its imitations from around the world. These were silicon rubber little bands you slipped on your wrist. They had a hologram, much like the hologram you see on credit cards. I'm going to give you a big spoiler here. It turned out to be a massive scam, a con, but let's look quickly at Wikipedia. Power balance. Power balance is the original band of hologram bracelets, claimed by its manufacturers and vendors to use, quote, holographic technology end quote, to, quote, resonate and respond with the natural energy field of the body, end quote, and increase sporting ability. Numerous independent studies of the device found it to be no more effective than placebo for enhancing athletic performance, and the manufacturer was forced by the ACCC to retract any previous claims in 2010. The product was originally promoted at trade shows at the beginning of 2006, utilizing applied kinesiology, and that's a well-known form of quackery, as its most effective sales tool. The bracelets went on sale in 2007 and had several celebrity endorsements. They had become a trend among high school, collegiate, and professional sports between 2008 and 2012, although bands are regularly cited on athletes today. Those 5 years were the biggest boom for Power Balance. It goes on, Power Balance headquarters, which was located in Laguna Niguel, California at the time, denied that they made any medical or scientific claims about their products. Now, years ago, a decade or so ago, Brian Dunning from Skeptoid and I drove over to the Power Balance headquarters at Laguna Niguel, and we were too chicken to go inside and confront them. And we thought there'd be no point. What's the point? I think we had some photographs taken up the front of their office, cheesy smiles to the camera or something like that. Now, a major part of this story is that it was action taken here in Australia that I think had a huge impact in the downfall of Power Balance. And, I can take a small measure of credit in that downfall. So in late November or early December 2009, the Today Tonight tabloid TV program here in Australia featured a story about Power Balance wristbands, and it was pretty positive. The reporter seemed to be convinced by the claims. They did the standard applied kinesiology tricks, and it was a very positive report. I saw this report, and I know the tricks of applied kinesiology, so I emailed the producer and said, if you'd like to have me on, I could show you how the tricks work. They did. Within a week, I was on a plane to Adelaide, where I filmed a segment with the crew and 9 or so volunteers, and Tom O'Dowd, who was the head of Power Balance Australia at the time. And it says here in Wikipedia, in December 2009, an informal double-blind test was performed on the Australian television program Today Tonight, led by Richard Saunders from Australian Skeptics. The results showed strong evidence that any effect of the holograms is too small to measure against the placebo effect. Well, yes, more or less. We performed a series of tests where Tom O'Dowd was given a lineup of people, one of whom had the real device about their person, and he did these applied kinesiology tests, and test after test after test, he could not tell which person had the real Power Balance device as opposed to dummy cards we had as well. It was a pretty spectacular fail, and I think that in part led to later on the Australian authorities taking the company to task. This is a very lengthy article. It says here, in December 2010, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC, obtained from Power Balance Australia Proprietary Limited an undertaking to take a number of actions in relation to correcting their misleading advertising. And they had to produce in newspapers and so on retractions and apologies and so on. In November 2011, Power Balance filed for bankruptcy after suffering a net loss of more than $9 million that year. But let's see what was reported in the newspapers at the time, about a decade or so ago. Now, I was surprised to see that there were quite a lot of returns when I was looking for Power Balance, and I've also raided my own archives I made at the time of various newspaper reports. But here's a report by Nick Walshaw of the Daily Telegraph, published in 2010 on the 11th of June. I'm not wearing one of those things. No way. This is how the Power Balance wristbands was welcomed into New South Wales Origin camp this week. Now, just as an aside, for international listeners, Origin is it's a football competition here in Australia, held in the middle of winter. A 3-match series played between New South Wales Rugby League and Queensland Rugby League. We go on. It was laughed off by one senior Blue, and Blue is the New South Wales team, who felt he put too many years into running shuttles, benching iron, to shove all faith into some rubbery trinket. At which point Blues wrestling coach John Donahue extended his hand with said sky blue bracelet, simply shrugged and said, "You have to wear it, mate. They're a sponsor." Yep, this is the humorous truth behind Australia's latest sporting fad. The reality of a wristband now dropping en masse off the same production line that gave us torpedo pants and nasal strips, Reebok pumps and lemon detox diet. AFL in Western Sydney. Peter Brock had the crystals for his Commodore. DK Lilly, an aluminium bat. Goes on to say, some $60 of silicon that. Since being discovered, somewhat ironically, in a South Coast pro shop by West Tigers prankster Bo Ryan, it has spread throughout every NRL club and now into the Origin arena. Only last week, Power Balance employees conducted a series of tests on every Tigers player before individually fitting those wristbands said to increase power, speed and flexibility, to improve core strength by 500%. Like an ab cruncher without, well, the crunching. Goes on to say, indeed, Power Balance CEO Tom O'Dowd stressed that, outside a website spiel about holograms embedded with positive frequencies, little can also be revealed about his product because nobody wants to give away their secrets and the marketplace is already flooded with cheap fakes. Not all the Blues, however, will wear them. Like our veteran who, just before the official team photo, protested along the lines of an NRL coordinator who insists that they, quote, merely satisfy quick fix needs of Gen Y, end quote. Another labelled them dubious, while Canterbury coordinator Tom Grimaldi said none of his players wear them. A few weeks back we had 2, Grimaldi shrugs, but they did nothing, so the boys chucked them. And this just goes to illustrate how important promoting these bands were at the time with sporting teams. So free samples were sent to sporting teams. Players wore them and they got a lot of free publicity that way. Now we come to a report in the Sydney Morning Herald dated the 24th of June 2010. The Power of One band claims to be tackled by health regulator. By Nikki Phillips, Science. A sports product endorsed by NRL and AFL players may be investigated by the National Health Regulator after it received a complaint that the manufacturer is making bogus medical claims. Power Balance wristbands, marketed as being able to instantly improve strength, flexibility and balance, adorn the wrists of many of Australia's top athletes, including AFL player Brendan Favola and NRL players Timana Tohu and Benji Marshall. The bands, which are made of silicon, contain a small hologram which the distributors claim is, quote, embedded with frequencies that react positively with your body's natural energy field, end quote. And if you ever need an example of word salad, that was it. The Therapeutics Goods Administration rejected initial concerns about the product, saying the bands were not registered with the administration because they do not meet the definition of a medical device or therapeutic good. But Dr. Ken Harvey, a public health researcher at La Trobe University, said the distributor of Power Balance was making medical claims and breaking the Therapeutics Goods Act by not registering its product. In his submission to the administration's complaint resolutions panel, he said the bracelets also breached the TGA's advertising code by making unsubstantiated claims. To date, the American manufacturer has not published a single peer-reviewed clinical study. Instead, numerous celebrity endorsements are displayed on the website. If you look at the science behind the band, it is unstated, unclear and unpublished, said Dr. Mark Cohen, a medical doctor and associate professor of complementary medicine at RMIT University. I am very dubious of anything that is based on anecdotes and testimonials and absolutely no scientific evidence. Power Balance claims the hologram in the center of the bracelet is made from mylar, a polyester film treated with, quote, energy waves at specific frequencies, unquote. The company said this interacted with the, quote, body's natural energy flow, unquote, to improve strength, balance, and flexibility. Dr. Cohen said the term natural energy flow was often referred in Eastern and Chinese medicine as the acupuncture meridian or qi. While all living cells give off small electrical impulses, it had never been proven that what flows through the acupuncture meridian was electrical energy. And I'll just say here, let's remember Hyman's maxim. Before trying to determine how something works, discover if it works. So by saying it had never been proven that what flows through the acupuncture meridian, well, first of all, it's never been proven that there are acupuncture meridians, and it's never been proven that anything flows there regardless. We read on. A rigorous scientific study to test the claims could be easily set up, Dr. Cohen said. You just need a placebo band and a power balance band to see if the wearer is stronger or not. The distributor, Tom O'Dowd, said customers would be requesting a refund if the technology didn't work. And just a couple of points here. I did that test on TV with Tom O'Dowd, the double-blind test with a placebo. It wasn't rigorous, of course. It wasn't a scientifically rigorous test, but it was good enough. And this point where Tom O'Dowd said customers would request a refund if the product didn't work, well, often not, no. And Power Balance is a great case study in that. Thousands were sold. It didn't work. As we know, it didn't work. Yet thousands of people were not requesting refunds. Either they just kept wearing it, they put it in the cupboard or forgot about it. They didn't care. They didn't worry about it. That is a great one used by quacks saying that, well, this product offers a full refund. Well, so what if it doesn't work in the beginning? And now from the Sydney Morning Herald again, dated the 20th of November 2010, Therapeutic Wristbands Are Not So Therapeutic, by Nikki Phillips. Technology. The distributors of Power Balance wristbands breached federal laws by falsely claiming they could improve people's fitness, an independent review panel has found. The $60 bands contain a small hologram which the owners claimed has been embedded with frequencies that react positively with the body's natural energy field to improve balance, stamina, and flexibility. During the past year, the silicon bands have adorned the wrists of many well-known Australian athletes, including AFL player Brendan Favola and NRL player Benji Marshall. The panel, which reviews complaints about breaches of the Therapeutics Goods Advertising Code, found some websites, including powerbalance.com.au, violated the code by publishing advertisements that suggested the bands were therapeutic. In Australia, any product that claims to have a therapeutic use must be included on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, where medicines and medical devices are assessed based on their risk to the public. The Complaints Resolution Panel said because the advertisements suggested the bands were therapeutic, their proposed benefits were misleading, aroused unwarranted expectation about their effectiveness, and provided no evidence to support their claims. The panel asked Power Balance Australia, which distributes the band on behalf of the US manufacturer, and other websites promoting the bands to withdraw their advertisements. They also required any advertisements claiming the band could restore balance and equilibrium, increase stamina, and improve recovery and flexibility be withdrawn. In response, Power Balance acknowledged it had breached the code. Since the time of the complaint, the relevant claims have been removed from the website, it said. Ken Harvey, a public health physician at La Trobe University who made the original complaint to the panel, said that despite the finding against Power Balance, the panel had no powers to implement sanctions. Sponsors, or advertisers in the know, knowing this panel has no power, thumb their nose and do nothing, he said. The panel, which meets only once a month, was always overloaded with complaints, he said. The Therapeutic Goods Administration did not agree with the finding, saying it did not believe the wristbands were a therapeutic good as defined by the Therapeutic Goods Act. There are a number of products on the market that make claims that may not be capable of being substantiated. However, such claims do not necessarily make these products therapeutic goods as defined by the Therapeutics Goods Act, a spokeswoman said. And yes, a big shout out to Ken Harvey. What a champion of health he is, and a tireless campaigner in the fight against quackery, like this device. And let's round this off with a couple of letters to the editor of the Sydney Morning Herald, which appeared on the 24th of December 2010. And there's a little cartoon accompanying this page with a man behind a little table selling these bands at $50 each. And he says, bracelets, get your anti-scam bracelets here. Protection against fraudsters. First letter says, Power Imbalance goes against Gullible. Now that the Power Balance bunkum has been blown, perhaps the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission could turn its attention to the myriad other pseudo-scientific scams bilking the public. How about sending a few investigators to that charlatans' love-in, the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, and see if those peddlers of pricey piffle can justify their outlandish claims. And that was written by Jeff Saunders, Jamboree, who happens to be my brother. And the next letter says, I thought Power Balance bands were a great idea. They allowed me to instantly identify stupid and gullible people. A bit mean-hearted there, from David Harrell in Erskineville. Well, there we go, some of the interesting media reports of the time of Power Balance, and you can still buy similar products, but the heyday, when it was a really big fad and there were lots of knockoffs and clones and people jumping on the bandwagon at the time, there must have been millions of these things made. At some stage or other in the following years, I found a barrel full of them being sold for $3 each at the reverse garbage store here in Sydney, which sells things at the end of the line or whatnot. Power Balance wristbands, a case study in quackery, frauds, cons, investigations, and action being taken. And a lot of credit, of course, goes to Ken Harvey for his tireless work. But for me personally, it was quite an event to do those double-blind tests with the manufacturer, or I should say the distributor here in Australia, on national television. Yes, I'll link to that report, that TV report, in this week's show notes. But you don't need a link to visit Trove at trove.nla.gov.au. Put in your search, and you never know what you'll find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. At the time of recording, which is Sunday morning, the 9th here in Sydney, Australia, I do not yet know today's COVID numbers for New South Wales, but in the last week they have shot up by leaps and bounds. The media are using terms like skyrocketing, an explosion of cases. And yesterday, if I remember correctly, it was 45,000 cases plus. In the state of Victoria, it was 50,000 cases plus. Who knows? Who knows what it will be today? To all my listeners around the world, but particularly in Australia, I don't know what to say. Just continue to take care. I had my booster about 4 days ago. It was Moderna, whereas before my first 2 shots were AstraZeneca, and I had extremely mild little reactions, felt a bit unwell, and then was absolutely fine. Moderna was a bit more severe in the reaction. My arm was very sore, and for about, I don't know, maybe 24 hours or so, I was feeling unwell. But it passes, and I know then that those little antibodies in my body are doing their job. Even though the numbers are skyrocketing, of course, we should all still maintain our schedule of vaccination. Coming up on next week's show, the Trove segment, we'll look at that evergreen of skepticism, crop circles. But before I go, thank you once again, sincerely, to those wonderful people who subscribe to the Skeptic Zone with money, funds, geld, cash, lucre, at skepticzone.tv via Patreon or PayPal. Needless to say, once again, my other sources of income have taken a dive. I think partly because many people who would normally take part in the entertainment industry, in the film industry, TVs, that sort of thing, they're getting sick with COVID and they can't turn up to work. I'm sure there's lots of productions and TV productions, movie productions and such being put on hold, delayed, cancelled. And so more than ever, I appreciate those people who contribute to the Skeptic Zone to help keep me producing the show every week. Like those birds outside the window. I'm sure they appreciate it too. Another way you could possibly help the Skeptic Zone is if you go to the subscriptions page at skepticzone.tv, scroll down, you'll notice a link to my Amazon wish list. And you can always have a look at that list to see if there's anything there you would like to buy for the Skeptic Zone as your donation. That would be much appreciated. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.